Good morning, everybody. I'm Tom Brackett. I'm the president and CEO of the New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce. And I would like to welcome you to the first in a series of 5 webinars that we will be co-hosting with Bank of America. We call this series the Business Case for Diversity because when a business becomes more diverse and more inclusive, it sees tangible benefits to its bottom line. The New Jersey Chamber believes the current focus on achieving diversity is long overdue, and I am proud to say our chamber is taking a leadership role in advocating for increased diversity and inclusion. This series of webinars is one of the examples of that. Today's webinar is especially important because it offers a blueprint for action in achieving diversity. It is called the Equality of Opportunity Agenda. It was crafted by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce after discussions with leaders from the business, civic, and education communities around the nation, and it will be presented today by Latricia Boone, Vice President at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, who is responsible for this initiative at the U.S. Chamber. I would like to thank Bank of America, our partner and sponsor for this series of webinars. In a moment, I will turn the webinar over to Albert Garofalo of Bank of America. But before I do, just a reminder to everybody, today's webinar is being recorded and a replay of it will be made available beginning tomorrow. Following our speaker's presentation, there will be a Q&A session. Some questions have been submitted in advance, and we invite you to submit any other questions via the chat box. We will get to as many questions as we can during the hour, and if we can't, we will attempt to answer them after the webinar is over. Now it is my pleasure to introduce to you the President, Bank of America, New Jersey, and our new board member at the New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce, Albert Garofalo. Alberto Garofalo.
Tom, good morning, and thank you so much for that introduction. Look, it's my privilege to join the board of New Jersey State Chamber, and I look forward to assisting the chamber to serve the needs of the businesses here across this great state of New Jersey. And to all of you, good morning. It is great to connect this way. It's an honor to be with you, and welcome everyone to the launch of the Business Case for Diversity webinar series. When we approach the chamber about the opportunity to engage and respond to the needs of businesses, we couldn't think of a more pressing topic than really diversity and recognizing its importance to our collective success. And look, we know, and Tom talked about this, there's a link between diversity and businesses' financial performance. We know diversity can help foster innovation and creativity and give businesses a competitive edge and help them respond to the demographic shifts of both their teammates, their clients, and of course, it also helps attract and retain talent so that we can continue to improve performance. At Bank of America, we know diversity makes us stronger, and the value we deliver as a company is only strengthened when we bring these broad perspectives together to meet the needs of our teammates, our clients, and our communities. And at all levels across our company, we focus on attracting, retaining, and developing diverse talent. Our board and its committees play a key role in the oversight of our culture, holding management accountable for the highest principles of ethical professional conduct and commitment to being a great place to work. And look, and of course, I believe diversity starts at the top, and our very own CEO, Brian Moynihan, chairs our Global Diversity and Inclusion Council and has since its inception. Now, I'm sure like many of you, looking back over the events of 2020, it has been a challenging year to say the least. And all of us rose to the occasion like we did at Bank of America, and we continue to strive to really meet these ongoing challenges that our teammates, our clients, and our communities continue to face. And as each of us rose to the challenges that were presented, and that includes obviously us, of course, at Bank of America, I want to share some perspectives of what we did and what we continue to do. We started obviously with providing critical capital that was so needed and continues to be needed, obviously. We donated PPE. By the way, that includes over 1.2 million masks, one of the first to partner with the governor's office and the New Jersey State Police to donate that PPE. We've made over $4.5 million in philanthropic investments to ensure our neighbors throughout the state had access to food, to housing, and the other essential human needs that, again, were so amplified by the pandemic. We also announced about 10 months ago several new commitments to build on our long-standing focus on these important issues, including a $1.25 billion 5-year commitment, an initiative to create opportunity for people and communities of color in the areas of health, healthcare, jobs reskilling, support for small businesses and affordable housing. And look, we will continue to help our teammates, help our communities heal, take broad and sustainable action, and frankly, hopefully serve as a catalyst for others to do the same and do more, because it is absolutely needed. And as part of this commitment, we announced that $300 million of that will be directed to 4 key areas: jobs initiatives, community outreach and initiatives, minority deposit institutions, and minority entrepreneurs, businesses, and funds. And across New Jersey, we are moving forward with finalizing $5 million in equity investments that will deploy the much needed capital that I talked about directly to Black, Hispanic, Latino, and other underrepresented minority and women-led entrepreneurs in New Jersey, so that they can grow, that they can create the jobs and make the positive impact that is so needed across our community. Look, internally, we have built on our efforts at Bank of America to ensure a diverse and inclusive workplace, and frankly have seen increases in diverse representation in nearly every area across our company. But we're not done. The work is only beginning, and we're committed to doing more. And we will continue to build on Bank of America's longstanding focus on racial equality, economic opportunity, and are very committed to do more and obviously say more. And we will do that, obviously, by continuing to partner with Tom and the entire chamber. And frankly, I just want to thank Tom and the entire chamber for the opportunity to partner in this important series as we formally kick it off today. Now, and it's my pleasure to introduce our great speaker, Latricia Boone. Latricia is a recent addition to the U.S. Chamber team, where she serves as Vice President of its Equality of Opportunity Initiative. Her most recent position before joining the U.S. Chamber was a Senior Director of Partnerships at the Leadership for Educational Equity. She led that organization's national partnership strategy to develop a diverse pipeline for civic leaders. And prior to that, she served as a Director of Congressional Advocacy for the National Urban League, where she expanded the League's legislative and policy influence. Latricia has also held executive positions at the University of Maryland, BDC Public Affairs, and the Sodexo Corporation. She is a native of Washington, D.C., and holds a bachelor's degree from Howard University and a master's degree from Johns Hopkins. Again, it's my pleasure to introduce Latricia Boone. Thank you. Latricia, over to you.
Thank you so much, Alberto, and just thank you, Tom, and thank you to the New Jersey Chamber for the invitation for the U.S. Chamber to be part of this very important conversation, this very significant series. I think timely would be an understatement for, what this means to business, what it means to your work in New Jersey, but most importantly, the connection back to the work that we're doing at a national level. And so I'm just very honored to be part of today's conversation and to be able to share a little bit more with you all about the work that the U.S. Chamber is doing and how we hope to continue to partner and engage across this country, particularly in New Jersey and with you all and the work that you're doing. I'm actually going to share my screen because I'm going to share a presentation, a slide deck on that helps to kind of add to this conversation around our work. And I will say that I hope that today's conversation, I look forward to today's conversation being just that, a conversation. I want to share more about the Chamber's Equality of Opportunity Initiative, but I also want to hear a little bit more from you all about, what experiences you're having, how can the Chamber support that? And as Tom mentioned, want to be able to provide, I don't know if I'll call it a blueprint as Tom did, which was wonderful, but really some key steps, some tangible solutions that the Chamber has identified and how we can, again, work together to move these things forward. And so Our Equality of Opportunity Initiative, which again, we've talked about and shared, is what I am helping to lead at the U.S. Chamber, was officially launched last year. Coming out of, I think we all know that last year was a year of lots of conversation, dialogue about race, about systemic issues, opportunity gaps, and all that it meant. And a year where at the US Chamber, we recognized that it was such a great opportunity for business to rise to the occasion, as Alberto said, and to really step up and lead. We have been doing equality-oriented work at the Chamber for some time. And so last year wasn't necessarily the start of this, but it really was an opportunity for us to make an official initiative that we launched through this work. For those of you who might or may not be familiar with the Equality of Opportunity Initiative, it's really around developing sustainable solutions to help close race-based opportunity gaps in several key areas. And I'll talk a little bit more about those key areas in a moment, but through this initiative, we are proud to be leading companies across the country to advance private sector solutions. So we'll talk about some of the things that companies are doing and that the Chamber is supporting companies in doing. So, similar to what Alberto really talked about, how Bank of America has stepped up. But also the Chamber has a platform, and we have a place where we can influence in the policy side. And so we really believe that this being able to bridge these gaps are not just about private sector solutions, but how can we be a force as we think about federal, state, and local level policy solutions. And so our formula, our equality of opportunity agenda, is around how we can bring those private and public sector solutions together to narrow those race-based gaps. And that is really what this work is about. So when we launched or began to think about the initiative and what we were going to do, we pulled together, I will say that this work is deeply rooted in research. We brought together a number of key stakeholders. We did listen and learn sessions to understand what folks were facing at a local level, understand what we were seeing at a national level, and what were some of the root causes of what we were seeing in these gaps that existed, so that we can begin to shape and come up with some solutions that were not just going to be on paper, but that solutions that we could actually drive and be tangible and advance, and not just, again, at a national level, but that we can then partner with our state and local chambers to move this work forward together. And so on this slide, I share a little bit about the steering committee that we pulled together last year. We have since worked with a number of companies, but also we've had more than 500 state and local chambers sign on, including the New Jersey Chamber, to think about how together we will move this work forward. And our state and local chambers have just been amazing in this space, because we are learning a lot from the work that our state and local chambers are doing, and also about how they are able to advance and make progress and the work that they're doing in communities, and what that means to the work that we're doing nationally, and really informing our policy solutions as well. So in launching this work, we actually hosted last year a national summit on equality of opportunity in June of last year, where we brought together folks from various different industries. We brought corporate leaders, we brought, again, private sector folks, we brought folks from higher education, as we were thinking about bringing together voices who understood some of the issues, had a stake in some of these issues, and realizing that while business has an opportunity to lead in this space, we cannot do it alone. And so we brought together these groups. We began to really discuss solutions. We thought about, as we were building out what our agenda would look like, how could we bring in some of the perspectives that we learned through our national summit. And I will say that it was, I think, a successful summit. We had thousands, over 5,000 folks join the conversation just generally. And we left that with really a strong blueprint in the sense of how we could move this work forward. We built some really great partnerships. And this year, that particular conversation was about dialogue, was about convening, was about building that network and those partnerships. And this year we are hosting our second annual summit, which is around how do we move this conversation forward? So a lot has been happening over the last year, but we want to make sure that we have impact. A lot of companies made commitments last year around diversity and equity and inclusion and equality. And we want to ensure that business community commitments go beyond just commitments and that we are actually driving toward the impact that we want to have together. And so this year's summit, which hopefully you all will see an invitation coming through or save the date coming through in the next few weeks, but will be about how do we now harness the energy that we have in various different spaces for a collective that we can actually move this work forward together. As I mentioned, our work has truly been rooted in research and data. The reality today is that the opportunity to obtain an education, to secure a job, to start a business, to provide for your family in many places is stubbornly determined by the color of one's skin, by race and ethnicity in many cases. And so, we wanted to ensure that we're not anecdotally saying that, but we are digging deeply into what the numbers look like. And so we know that for decades, based on our research, Black unemployment rates have been consistently twice as high. Students of color are twice as likely to attend high poverty schools than their white peers. Black business owners have struggled and continue to struggle to access capital for their businesses. And this has been even more prominent as we have been in a global pandemic, and we've seen how businesses, particularly businesses led by individuals of color, have struggled. And it continues to be that way, unfortunately. And then Black Americans are more likely than whites to be arrested, convicted, and sentenced, making it more difficult and sometimes impossible to re-enter the job market. So these numbers for us were pretty stark, were pretty telling. We knew some of these things, but the data really gave us some tangible thoughts around, okay, what are the solutions that we need to put together to be able to move and close these opportunity gaps? Our equality of opportunity agenda, again, is not just around a dialogue and conversation, although we believe the Chamber has a space in that. It is also around how can we make changes in these numbers and help stop these persistent disparities that we see happening. And we created this data piece that I'm showing on the slide here that's called our America's Opportunity Gaps by the Numbers. It also is on our website. I think it's very helpful for folks who are just wanting to get some data points as you think about your own work and what this means. And so this really was the driving factor to help us pull our agenda together and be able to figure out where we were going to where business had an opportunity to have impact, where we needed to really partner with others, and where we could have the most progress in moving this work forward. So we developed our agenda, the Equality of Opportunity agenda. Also on our website, I encourage you, I will talk a little bit about it today, but I encourage you, if you have not seen it, to please dig in a little bit more. This agenda literally lays out the solutions that we have identified through our research and around some of the best practices, what the private sector is doing, where there's an opportunity for the public sector to lean in, and where even we believe state and local policy has a role in moving on some of these issues. And this agenda is really built on the pillars and the issues that we identified as the most pressing and the most opportunity for us as a business community to move things forward together. It's around education, it's around employment, it's around entrepreneurship, criminal justice, health, and wealth disparities. So these are the areas that our agenda is focused on, and this is where we believe as business leaders, we really truly do have an opportunity to advance equality and also help close some of the existing gaps that we are seeing and have seen for many, many years, unfortunately. I won't go deeply, because I encourage you to review our agenda, but I do want to just touch on, so you have an idea in some of the areas when we talk about education solutions, some of the things that we are pushing for and that the chamber is leading on, and also, coalescing our business communities around. When we talk about education, absolutely around K through 12 accountability, I think education accountability, we know that there are students who've been somewhat passed through systems. We know that it's not enough to just assess, what's happening, not just enough to test students and see what the numbers are, but we have to have accountability among school districts, accountability among schools. And so we are pushing for that through legislation in many ways, and also through, private sector dollars often going into state and local education. And so how can we help to move and to support accountability in those spaces? When we talk about promoting soft skills necessary for employment, as businesses, we know that soft skills are very important. Technical skills are important, but those soft skills are also important as we think about leadership in spaces. And so how can we as business support, provide resources and tools to school districts, to leaders, to be able to prepare students for the roles that we know we need students to be prepared for. And so we are doing work around that. We are actually partnering with business at a national level, but also partnering with organizations that work with students to really see how we can translate what business needs back to those particular organizations and school districts, and vice versa. And of course, closing the digital education divide is huge. We saw, or we have seen during COVID, that this has even been enlightened even more, right? Students who do not have access to the technology to be able to attend classes, there's a gap, and we're going to see that play out even more as students even transition back into classrooms. And so we are supporting legislation, and we are also supporting private sector initiatives to really think about how we can close that digital divide. And again, there are a number of other programs and policies that we are also investing time and energy into to move forward as we think about education and the role that business can play in education solutions. Employment solutions, I think this is huge. When we talk to our companies that we are working with as a part of our Equality of Opportunity initiative, this is the biggest thing when we think about reskilling, upskilling, gaps and what we need in terms of employees. We are trying to be a leader in helping folks understand, when we say employment solutions, what can we do? How do we utilize data to improve workforce diversity? Alberto talked a little bit about, but not only just improving diversity, but how do we, lean in on inclusion and belonging in the space where employees really feel like they can be part of the spaces that they're working in, that they can bring their whole selves to work and really feel good about the spaces that they're working in. So how are we supporting our member companies in those spaces? Expanding tax incentives for employment in opportunity zones is one that we are supporting from a policy perspective. Pay for performance job training programs in areas of high unemployment. So how do we again reskill, upskill in places where we see high unemployment, support and think about those, because there are folks in those communities, but how can we play a role in supporting programs that are going to help bring those folks into the jobs that we need to fill as businesses and business leaders? And then also thinking about how we support working parents, affordable and quality childcare. And so we actually supported legislation that to really help move that forward in the employment space. I think this is huge for us, and it is one that we are spending a great deal of time focused on in supporting our companies. And the other thing I'll talk about really quickly is that we launched a partnership with the National Association of Corporate Directors, because companies have told us that they are looking to bring more diversity to their corporate boards and leadership. And so we have launched an initiative around connecting executives and diverse executives with opportunities and roles within corporate boards and spaces. And that is one that we are moving forward and advancing in this moment. Entrepreneurship, I can't underscore this enough. There's a lot of work that's happening here The U.S. Chamber Foundation launched a coalition to back Black business during the course of our global pandemic, which was really around getting capital, but also providing training, support, mentorship to businesses that were finding themselves in difficult spaces during this pandemic, and how could we support them and give them the tools and resources needed to be able to sustain and also, if possible, scale and grow even in this difficult time frame. We're seeing that with small businesses across the board, of course, and particularly it's been stark for businesses led by folks of color and minority-owned businesses. And so we're doing a lot of work around this. We're trying to work to improve access to capital, supporting legislation to support efforts of the Minority Business Development Council agency. And so there's a lot that's happening, and we are investing not just financially through partnerships, but also time and mentorship opportunities. And definitely encourage folks, if you see ways that you can do that and want to partner with the Chamber, please let me know, because there's lots of opportunity here as well. Criminal justice is an area that we have, from a policy perspective, have seen a lot of opportunity and really have driven and supported legislation in that space. And I will say second chance hiring, fair chance hiring is one that we've heard from companies that they're very interested in leaning in on and understanding. And so we have been creating spaces to open up conversation, to share more resources and tools with our member companies, and be able to, again, I can't say enough, move policy in this space as we think about where there are opportunities on the criminal justice side. One of the ways that we are moving this work forward is through our policy task forces. We launched several task forces around the key pillars that we believe are important. And these work groups are comprised of not just our member companies, but obviously state and local chamber members, other experts in this space, folks that we believe have a role and a voice to bring. And as we have developed our agenda and we've talked about these, outlined these solutions, we are also taking time through our policy or through our task forces to really think about, okay, how do we bring these solutions to life? Because it's one thing to put them on paper, it's one thing to develop an agenda, but literally working together to pull out best practices. Our companies are sharing some of the things that they're doing. Companies are making connections with one another, networking, sharing experiences. And then we're also getting a chance to bring policy leaders into this space to share more, to elevate what companies are doing, what we know is important, and encourage legislative activity as well, and policymakers to move. One of our task forces, I'll just share really quickly, that has received some of the most interest is our supplier diversity task force, which we have over 100 members of that particular task force. And at this time, we are actively developing a tool that we can use to share with our member companies. The Chamber is listening and learning from what our companies need and what their experiences are. And supplier diversity has been one that folks have, kind of said, we need support. We need to understand, how do we get connected with diverse suppliers? There are a lot of different things out there, but is there a one place that we can go to find out who the diverse suppliers are in the spaces where we are looking for suppliers, but also, making sure that they're credentialed, making sure they have what we need. And so we are actively working to develop a resource that we will hopefully be able to share in the next few months across our network that will help, I think, bring some solutions to that piece. And also for diverse entrepreneurs out there, give them access to companies that they've never had access to. And so that is a tool that we're really proud of. And it's through our task force that we're building this out, learning, hearing from. But all of our task forces are really doing great work in this moment. And I encourage, if there's any interest in becoming a part of one of our task forces or learning more, please reach out. Don't hesitate, because I think there's lots of opportunity here. And again, it's a place where we are seeing tangible solutions being developed that we ultimately believe are going to move this work forward. I will share really quickly, since we've launched our initiative last year, the Chamber has, I talked a little bit about some of the legislation we've endorsed, some of the legislation we're supporting, but we've literally endorsed over 14 bills in Congress. We are at this point tracking, monitoring some of those bills, watching the movement on them, and we continue to build some key relationships with members of Congress, doing briefings on issues of equality, and really trying to elevate the business voice in this space. You know, I have worked in the legislative space and the policy space for some time, and have, you know, built relationships. And I think, you know, some of our folks who are working on, some of our policymakers who are working on these issues have not always seen the business community's voice, or, you know, don't necessarily see the business community's voice as we think about equity and equality. And so we are trying to help them understand that the business community absolutely has a voice, is a leader in this space, and has been doing things. It didn't just start last year when we had, you know, this racial awakening or reckoning. It really has been happening, and we want to make sure that we are talking about this. And not only are we doing things as a business community, and we want members of Congress and policymakers to understand that, but we are continuing to evolve and work together and as a collective, and we want them to really see and leverage and utilize the data and information that we have to move this forward. I will share really quickly, one of the other things that we're doing as a part of our Equality of Opportunity initiative is Equality of Opportunity in Action, which is an event series that we launched last year. So we had our national summit, which was our huge event. And then coming out of that, we recognized that folks were, you know, hungry for more dialogue, more conversation, more solutions-oriented movement. And so we launched this event series where each month we focus on a different topic that is important and timely. In fact, this month, our focus was on the Asian American Pacific Islander business community and how we are supporting small businesses, but also business leaders in that space, particularly as we saw, you know, a rise in hate over the last few years, especially during the pandemic, and how we could support those business leaders. Next month, we're going to be talking about measuring, you know, companies have made commitments around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how do we measure and hold ourselves accountable in that space? And so we bring in leaders to talk about this work. We bring in some of our corporate partners, talk about what they're doing, and we also really try to engage members of Congress, policymakers in this space as well. It has received a lot, this particular event series has received a lot of attention. We have folks who are attending this on a monthly basis and coming back to us and talking about, you know, what they've learned, what they've experienced. Earlier this year, we did an event on vaccine hesitancy and diversity in clinical trials. And so we really are trying to touch on timely issues that are important to the business community, but also to the broad community, to show where business is leading in this space, and also that we can walk away with some really tangible solutions in this work. Some of the programs and initiatives, since we've launched last year, we have actually stood up over 15 programs and initiatives in this space. We have partnerships with historically Black colleges and universities, minority-serving universities, and one of our signature programs is our Next Gen Business Partnership. We're bringing students in from HBCUs to intern as part of the chamber. Some of them work with our member companies. Some of them actually work inside the chamber to learn, understand business, and really see themselves working in those spaces. So it's really a pipeline building program for students who not just, you know, getting business degrees, some are getting degrees in health and technology and other spaces, but really seeing the role that they can play in business. I talked a little bit about our Board Diversity Accelerator, where we are partnering with the National Association of Corporate Directors and being able to really identify executive leaders who are diverse for positions on corporate boards, where they can bring different voices, bring different perspectives to those spaces. We have a partnership with the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, where we last year, over the course of 2019 and 2020, hosted about 19 business roundtables at the local level. So we did this in 3 states, Mississippi, New Mexico, Alabama, and we learned a lot. Like, we brought business community together in those states, as well as policymakers, as well as nonprofits and community leaders. And we learned a lot. We were able to pull in lots of data that we are now sharing across our network, but also working with WK Kellogg to think about how we can expand this to do more roundtables in other states. And so maybe New Jersey will be down the road, but it's been such a great opportunity for us to capture data, but also bring folks together who had not been talking before about how we can move these issues together. And there's lots of great examples of where that's happening in other states, but there are states where that's not happening. And so we believe that as a U.S. chamber and as business community generally, we have a huge role to play in convening the right folks at the table to advance not just dialogue, but action. And we're doing a lot of work around diversity data, tools development. We're developing an index that we hope to be able to share that is really going to add value to think about, what is happening as we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion within companies, but what we are also seeing where there's opportunity to grow in this space and literally build on our equality of opportunity by the numbers. Data that we have already put together. And as I said before, we've stood up initiatives around entrepreneurship. We're doing work in the entrepreneurship space. And we believe this is really important. How do we support businesses, minority businesses, especially in this work? So lots happening on the chamber side, as I shared, definitely driven by data and informed by conversations with business, government, academic, and civic leaders. Our EOI agenda is really around how can we improve access, improve opportunity, and move this work forward at a national level, but really bringing in our corporate partners and folks at the state and local levels to move this work forward. One of the things I will say is that we talk about this, and this series is really that around the business case for diversity. What we know is that diversity and equality are not just moral imperatives. We believe they're moral imperatives, but they are literally matters of economic competitiveness for business. Our work has shown, data has shown that companies that are more diverse and more inclusive are in fact more profitable and more successful. And in turn, our communities and our economy benefits. I talked about our partnership with WK Kellogg. One of the things that the Kellogg Foundation has actually stood up was the business case report that asserts that closing the racial inequity gap will add 8 trillion GDP to the US economy. So for us, that number is huge. It means a lot because you think about it, as we think about our work, and the fact that business is literally the essential driver for our economy, the business case is hugely important, is significant. We know that there are growing skills gaps. We know that there are more jobs. There are shrinking pools of candidates. So it's not just about opportunity, but about a critical need to expand and diversify. And I will just say that as we think about how we keep up with the demand and embracing changing needs, we know that we have to do things differently and we have to think about the workforce of the future, and our quality of opportunity for us is definitely tied to that, for sure. There's so many reports out there. Alberto talked about it. I know Thomas talked about it, that show that diverse teams are more innovative. They're stronger at anticipating shifts. We have to be responsive to our consumers. We have to be responsive to our clients. And we know that having a competitive advantage really stems from being able to bring those diverse perspectives in, not just from financial gains, which is hugely important, but also from being able to maintain and retain employees and have the productivity that we need and the movement and the advancement that we need. And so for us, it is just hugely important. I say these things and, the stats are absolutely important, but I say them and I reiterate them because as we are talking about our quality of opportunity work, we believe, again, that it is important for communities, is important for people and individuals, but even more, it's important for our country, and the fact that we want to fully embrace the values of diversity, equity, inclusion, as it goes a long way for helping us to be globally competitive. And so I leave us with that in the sense that, let's think about how we tap opportunities to recruit the workforce of tomorrow, one that really reflects the full breadth of talent that exists in our surrounding communities, and really brings the innovation and the opportunity that we know exists. So I really thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. I'm excited to have more conversation and really wanted to leave time for a conversation to hear some of the questions that you all have and ways that we can partner or the chamber can really support your work. after we will share, I will definitely share this slide deck and some other resources. But if you at any point after this conversation are just interested in speaking with me, learning more about the Chamber's work, or have some particular questions that we are not able to answer on today's call, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. This is my Chamber email, and I'm always happy to talk more about this work, for sure.
I have a question. Well, first, a statement, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Great. I mean, that was awesome. First of all, the data, the information, I think was very clear, transparent. And I want to commend you and the organization for what you've done to your last statements, highlighting the fact that diverse teams drive revenue and create decision-making that is inclusive of a lot of different lenses. And I think that that's important. And you can see that in different organizations like a Procter & Gamble, like a Dove, who are the same thing. So they're looking to tell stories and bring a perspective to light so other people can see it maybe in ways that we don't. I think that's big. Has this also been a way that organizations like Bank of America or others have attempted to share different stories of organization, of people from different backgrounds? Have you seen that in some of the partner organizations?
Absolutely. I mean, I will say that when we talk about the diversity piece, and I think I touched on this, and I know Alberto did, but diversity is just one piece of it, right? But there is the inclusion and the belonging. And, questions come up often around how do we help internally, our organizations or our staff really get more comfortable with working on diverse teams and working with diverse people. Well, one of the ways of doing that is storytelling and sharing, because the more we understand others' experiences, others' perspectives, the more we can be open to diversity. And that goes on all sides of the coin. One question that has come up to me before is like, why is it so difficult to have conversations around diversity and race? And sometimes it's difficult because we don't understand others' perspectives. And also people feel like there's going to be a level of judgment if I say this or I say that, or if I'm honest about this thing. And so the more we share stories, the more we share perspectives and experiences, the more we can understand where others are coming from, be more open-minded. And I think it also makes for richer experiences as we are working on teams. Companies that have done really great jobs of the storytelling piece, who have been able to highlight and uplift examples of employees or ways that they're working in community with folks, I think have seen more success in their work because of the fact that they have been able to use storytelling, and people connect to stories. I mean, it's human nature for us, right? When I'm, oftentimes even speaking to groups and sharing an anecdote, I think people connect more, and I am seeing and hearing more from our companies. We just had PenFed share with us, CEO of PenFed sent a video over of, some work they're doing around supporting ex-offenders who are starting businesses in their community. And it was such a great video that they shared, and literally hearing that story, like I'm working on the policy side and I'm going out and talking about it, but seeing that story and that example of this business owner in this community who literally, was an ex-offender and is now getting his life on track and wants an opportunity, it made it real for me. And now I can use that and share with policymakers and others, because I think it'll make it real for them as well.
Amen.
Tricia, I think it's very obvious to our participants today as to why we are following the U.S. Chamber's lead on this initiative, because it is such a big component now of the U.S. Chamber, so well thought out, and you have some measurables that you have put in place and a lot of different issues covered that are important to the entire country and also the state of New Jersey. I would be remiss in not mentioning the fact that we did not do this. We, the state chamber, did not do this on our own. We partnered with the African American Chamber of New Jersey. John Harmon, who is a longtime friend of mine and a very close friend of mine, who runs that organization, also is on the National Steering Committee that put together the Equality of Opportunity Initiative for the U.S. Chamber. And he and I got together and said, it's time that we do something about this. And we started to formulate a plan, which culminated in a memorandum of understanding executed between the boards of the African American Chamber of New Jersey and the New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce. We, as the state chamber, realized that we needed to be more inclusive and diverse on our board membership. And with John's help, we recruited several Black business leaders and Black faith-based leaders to our board, including the gentleman, Dale Favors, who just asked the question a minute ago. And we are now formulating our plan to try to accomplish somewhat, maybe on a smaller scale, what the U.S. Chamber is trying to do on a nationwide scale. But our initiative was based on, we broke it down into 5 components that we think were measurable, that we could accomplish fairly quickly, where we could get successes on the board and then kind of build from those successes into other parts of your Equality of Opportunity Initiative that we are not going to address at the outset. But our whole point here is to try to have impact, get attention paid, educate the marketplace on the need for this, and then try to incorporate what some of these initiatives are in the larger corporations of New Jersey, with the ultimate intent of having this filter down to smaller companies. And if we can get the diversity and inclusion initiatives embedded in the smaller companies of New Jersey, I think then we have really hit a home run. So that is our ultimate goal. We've got a long way to go, but we're starting on that journey. And again, it's with the very close affiliation with the African American Chamber of New Jersey.
Yeah, and Tom, let me just say really quickly, so huge shout out to you, to John Harmon, who I've not had the opportunity to officially meet, but his name precedes him, his reputation. I've heard wonderful things. And because the work that you are doing is absolutely important. And when you say like getting DEI embedded into the smaller companies, I've worked in this space for some time and worked for much larger companies, but also have connected with smaller companies. And that is big. I mean, being very honest, actually, coming from a family of small business owners, it is difficult sometimes to prioritize that when there's so many other things. And so if you are able to move that work forward, let me just say that would be huge. And it would mean so much advancement and progress, because those are the companies that are touching our communities every day. And so if they can really embed this work and advance and have progress, it will mean so much to the how it feeds it up to the national work that we're doing.
And one thing, Latricia, you said that I think is very impactful is, we see a lot of companies announcing over the last year very significant growth in their diversity and inclusion initiatives, naming high executives within their companies to run those initiatives within the companies. And I think that would be the commitment from dialogue to action that you talked about. And that's why we focused on 5 issues, so that we can start with educating and a dialogue, and then quickly convert that to action, and have examples that we can spread throughout the New Jersey marketplace that people hopefully will benefit from and be attracted to incorporate within their company. So it's an interesting dynamic, but it's really starting to take off. And I applaud the U.S. Chamber for really teeing this up, because that was, to me, the beginning of this. And there's a lot more to build upon, but you all get a lot of credit for making sure that the initiative started off with a very strong bang, and hopefully have other people follow that initiative. Question I have for you is, at the U.S. Chamber level, on your Equality of Opportunity Initiative, how will you measure success for this program?
Yeah, that's so timely. We are working on our we have some thoughts around like our legislative wins, and how we see implementation at the state and local level, how we're supporting our state and local chambers. Absolutely, some of the ways that companies are actually moving this work forward, our brand visibility on the EOI and what that looks like. What is the dialogue that we're hearing? We are literally in this moment. We had a strategic planning session yesterday, our team, building out what our KPIs, our key performance indicators are going to be. We started to put some of that together before, but with me joining the team now, I've had an opportunity over the last couple of months, because I joined the chamber in February, to sit back, look at our initiatives and our programs, and now really try to come up with some of what that is going to look like. And so there's more to share on that, but we are thinking about, particularly as we say, this agenda is around private and public sector solutions, looking at what we actually see happening in the private sector and how this work is moving forward. And we will be talking to, tracking, looking at what our companies are doing, but then also in public sector, like what are the wins we are having legislatively, and not just at the national level, but also in our state and general assemblies as well.
We have another one of our new board members who has a question, Sandra Gilliard. Sandra?
Yes. Good morning to all of you. My question is really around accountability. And I say this because it's wonderful to see the work that's being done at the national level as well as in New Jersey. But having been in corporate for many, many years and having started my own business, there is a huge difference between the leadership saying that this is something that we want to do, this is something that we're committed to doing, and the work actually being done. There are corporations, you talked about stories, who have actually demonstrated, like AT&T, for instance. I worked for AT&T for many years. However, what we need to be able to understand and measure is how many of those companies are actually putting people in color on their board. How many of those people are companies are actually hiring people in key positions such that they too, they're at the table and they're in a position to incentivize others and help them understand the value of inclusion and diversity. What are they doing to then mentor the people who are there? So many times over the years, I have been in meetings where I hear the HR representatives say, oh, this is our scorecard, and we're having a problem in this segment with the African-American community because we can't find qualified people. Now, you and I both know that that's ridiculous. We've got numerous colleges and so forth and so on. So what we need to be able to understand and hold them accountable to is, don't simply tell us that this is what you're interested in doing. We want to see the actions year over year where you've actually done something. And no, we're not willing to accept that these people don't have the skills, because again, that is just not true. There are segments in every single part of the population where there's a skills gap, but don't simply put that over here and say African Americans don't have the skills, and therefore we can't find a handful of them to put in the leadership in our company. That's not acceptable. And that's why I'm excited about being a part of this, because I've lived it and I want to be able to bring that knowledge to the table. This isn't just rhetoric. This is actually being able to see what's going on and getting people not only in, but having them be a part of the culture, as opposed to then having those same people say, well, you're not really a part of this culture, because you know, culture is the new language. We have to be able to deal with that and deal with it head on, not dress it up, but deal with it head on.
I mean, Sandra, so first of all, thank you. It's great to meet you. I'm so glad that you have joined the New Jersey Chamber Board, because I think your voice and perspective is hugely important. And I, from my church background, I amen all that you're saying, because I probably haven't even worked in this space as long as you, but I've been in these spaces for over 20 years and I have seen it for myself and worked in corporate spaces. And you are speaking to everything that we are trying to move forward and advance, right? And so we often talk to companies, and we do sometimes hear that, we can't find qualified candidates, or we can't. And that is why we are trying to stand up initiatives that we can say, well, no, that's not the case. And let's talk about solutions orientedness. And we do want to see diverse folks at the table. One of the things I talked about was the event that we're doing next month, which in May, which is around that accountability piece, right? Because it isn't just about saying we're going to do this or we're going to put this in a plan, but then nothing ever happens. How do we, hold ourselves accountable for what we say we're going to do and actually see movement? Because I can tell you, working in diversity spaces, again, for many years, to be very honest, there were times when I felt like, okay, we're doing a lot, but are we actually doing and moving anything? And so that is not what we want to see at the U.S. Chamber. And when Tom asked the question about how we're going to track and measure, what you're talking about feeds right into that, because we want to be looking at, okay, companies said this, and we're also, in the process of developing an index that we will use to really go back and look at, well, what are companies actually doing? Are they putting folks into spaces? Are we seeing this happening? What are the employees feeling like? So we are already thinking about how we're going to measure and, again, support, and not to look at companies and point fingers and saying, well, you aren't doing this, but think about what we as the U.S. Chamber, based on our relationships and resources we have, can provide and help and support companies so that we don't have to have whether they're excuses or people in their mind really think that they can't find diverse candidates, or they, we don't even have to go down that road, because we understand who are the connection points, where are the folks, where can we find folks, what are the relationships we need to build, what are those things look like, and then we actually are moving and advancing those. And I know one of the things I've said to my colleagues is that I want to be able, because again, I'm like you, I've worked in these spaces for some time. I need to be able to look back a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and actually see progress. And not that we did a bunch of things, but we actually haven't seen progress, and that is very much rooted. So I know we're getting close to time, but I will. So and I could talk a lot about this topic. I just want to say that everything you said is right. And that is why we are trying to be very action oriented. We're thinking about the measurement, the tracking, the accountability piece, and how we bring the right voices in the spaces so that the people are hearing from and understanding, and not just going to talking to the same people to try to move this work forward.
Latricia, thank you so much for taking the time today to give us a very, very broad overview and an in-depth overview of what the U.S. Chamber is doing to help tell everybody why we are following that lead in New Jersey. I wish you the best in your new role at the U.S. Chamber. And I know we have a lot more questions people have. We might want to bring you back for a Latricia part 2 at some point in time down the road. I hope you'd be receptive to that. But thank you very much for the overview today. I also want to thank Alberto Garofalo and Bank of America for helping us make the webinars possible. Again, this is the first of 5. You will be hearing more about those webinars as we go forward. And again, thank you everybody for taking the time today to participate. And please watch for the next round of webinars that will be coming very soon. So, Latricia, thank you very much. Would you like to make any closing comments?
Yes, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, New Jersey Chamber. And thank you for all who participated and engaged in this conversation. And I will say, I think I received a few direct messages. Apologies, because I think when the Zoom closes, I won't get to see and respond to those. So please, I encourage you, send any questions to lboone@uschamber.com. Tom, welcome the invitation to come back just to have dialogue and conversation for sure. But please send any follow-up questions to my email, and I will definitely get back to you. I really enjoyed this opportunity.
Thank you, Latricia, and thank you everybody for joining us. And we hope to see you the next time for our next webinar. Thank you very much.